So welcome to my studio, where I'd like you to meet some of my friends who are going for it as well. Living the dream can be challenging, but there's always time for magic. Welcome, Ed Dixon.
Hello, Marianne.
So wonderful to have you
So
here.
happy to be here.
Last time I saw you, you were performing in the Metropolitan Room.
Yes.
We all celebrated your book that just came out.
Yes, yes.
Secrets of a Life on Stage and Off. It's a wonderful book, and let's look at the illustration first, because this is a wonderful picture of you.
This is by Ken Fallon, the fabulous artist, who is the principal caricaturist for the Wall Street Journal.
You inspire people with your music, with your composing, with your performing, with your singing, acting, and you're just a wonderful person who has inspired me and so many others.
Thank you, thank you.
So this year has been a very busy year for you.
I was in 2 Broadway shows at the same time.
At the same time?
At the same time.
How does that work?
I was playing Admiral Boom in Mary Poppins at night, and I was rehearsing the captain in Anything Goes. And people kept saying to me, "Oh, you're being demoted. You're going from a from an admiral to a captain." Those 2 weeks when I was doing both, it was very difficult. Wow. And then I segued into Anything Goes, and I had a lovely time there. But I was putting together this book and the act at the same time.
It's a dynamite act.
I was actually still playing in Anything Goes when I did the act. So
wow.
8 shows a week, and then I went and did this.
God. Yeah. And then you did Goodspeed.
Yes, I just got back from Goodspeed, and I did my act up there also. Plus, I did a reading of Cloak and Dagger, which is going to launch at the Signature Theater in D.C. in 2014 in the summer.
Congratulations!
Yes,
That's so exciting.
Very thrilling.
Wow. Yeah. So how does Ed do this? You're doing 2 shows, 2 Broadway shows. Where do you get the energy?
You just put one foot in front of the other. You know,
yeah.
When I was young, I felt like I rode along on a cushion of energy. And today, it's not like that. It's like right foot, left foot, right foot. And you just keep going.
So you've had a life of 42 years on Broadway, and Les Miz was also a very long run. So I would love to talk about a few things.
Yes, I did it 1,700 times.
1,700 times! Oh my God. And yeah, just to talk about Les Miz right now.
So I wrote a song that I felt Javert would sing. You know? And then they called me back a year later and asked me to come in for Jean Valjean. So I was singing Bring Him Home all the time. And I went in and
I heard you sing that on stage.
Yes. And I sang it. I thought, I'm going to get this. And all of a sudden, from the back of the auditorium, I hear, "Do you have something funny?" And I thought, oh, that's the end of my Jean Valjean audition. So I knew they were thinking about Thénardier, so I did Thénardier's song, and then they yelled at me from the back of the auditorium, "So will you do it?" And I thought, this is like
they offered it basically right there.
This is like the movie musical version of how you get a job. So will you do it? It was the hottest show in the world, and they yelled at me from the back of the auditorium, "Will you do it?" I was like, this is a dream.
Because you always knew you wanted to sing. You were a singer at heart.
I was raised by a revival minister father, and so from the earliest time I was in services and was leading the singing, and so I was singing in public from infancy practically. And I didn't realize that, you know, the church is basically theater, so I was born into it, although I didn't know it at the time, you know.
In high school, you wrote 3 musicals already.
Yeah, I look back on that, I'm like, I must have been the nerdiest kid in the world. I wrote 3 musicals, book music, and lyrics. I put together readings of them, you know.
So cool. In your book, there's, what I love is the setup too, because the chapters are short. A lot of people don't have the time span to go through Moby Dick. So even though you have such a long life, you concentrated, and your writing is so witty and so concise.
I edited it. I literally went through every line at least 35 times. I mean, from beginning to end. I just kept wanting to remove every extraneous word, and then finally every extraneous sentence, and then every extraneous story, and I cut whole chapters. I just wanted it to really move forward. And the best thing that people have said to me is, I can't put it down.
Exactly.
That's the thing that thrills me the most of all.
I had the same experience. Everything is a morsel of, wow. and you had so much humor even when you were going through hard times.
Yeah.
But now when you did your first Broadway musical, No, No, Nanette.
Yes, and the famous movie director Busby Berkeley, he invented the overhead shot. You know those shots of all the chorus girls in a circle forming flowers?
Him.
He invented that.
Oh my God.
And there he was working with, I was like 20 years old working with this famous man. And he was so old at the time that I couldn't grasp how famous he was or how huge his life had. And the same thing with Ruby Keeler. She had the personality of a sweet suburban mom. You expected her to make you cookies, and she'd been this huge movie star, you know, just amazing.
That is, and your first Broadway show was a hit.
Oh, a huge
So you already got used to a lot of success, and you also performed for Bernstein at the inauguration of
While I was doing that, I got hired by Leonard Bernstein to be a soloist in his Mass, which he wrote for the opening of the Kennedy Center. And it was the opportunity of a lifetime to work with Leonard Bernstein, writing an original piece, opening the Kennedy Center. All the Kennedys were there. I mean, it's just extraordinary. That was 1971. Extraordinary. And we took it to the Metropolitan Opera. Just an amazing experience. You know?
Just to backtrack with No, No, Nanette, what I love is in the book you write about you were so excited to be doing this show, and you said you were sorry for everybody who wasn't you, and you said, poor President Nixon, he can't sing a lick.
I was in the chorus of No, No, Nanette, and suddenly I looked around and I went, it's not anything to be in the chorus. It's like, yeah, it's impossible to achieve, but then once you're there, you're like, this isn't what I want. I don't want to be in the chorus. And then I thought, any young man who could fit in this costume could be standing here, and it wouldn't make any difference if it was me. And that's when I really started my journey. Richard Nixon had invited me to go and die in Vietnam. He sent me
To die?
Yes,
Invited you to die
my
in
number
Vietnam.
came up very high. And then I didn't go. I managed to get out of it, and then I got into No, No, Nanette, and then Richard Nixon came to No, No, Nanette, and I found myself shaking hands with Richard Nixon, who had invited me to go die in Vietnam. And I thought, I think it's much better that I'm here on Broadway.
But you didn't mention it.
I didn't mention it.
No, it's not the moment for it, but amazing. And then Les Miz, which is such an amazing story. During Les Miz, you got addicted to alcohol and drugs.
In the 1980s, New York was a party town, and like most of the people I knew were doing what they called partying. You know, like you'd go to a club on the weekends and drink too much and take this or take that. And I had a friend who was dealing, and it would be like, oh, this weekend we'll do this. Oh, next weekend we'll do that. And it seemed so lighthearted. And just gradually, you know, you wander off the path, and then you find yourself out in the middle of a field somewhere, and you can't get back. And that's what happened to me. And it coincided with this amazing success that I had, finally getting this fantastic part in this fantastic hit show.
And then you didn't have a home. You lost your home.
Yes.
How were you even able to be on stage and not just fall over?
I was playing a character who was an alcoholic, abusive monster, you know, and so the reality and the fantasy mixed together. And sometimes I would stay up all night and then come in and do the matinee and then do the evening show. And I look back and I go, how did I do that? You know, it's just...
And also what struck me, you said you had this image of yourself as an artistic, exotic flower, but then you saw how you survived all this tremendous strength. And there's one moment where, I don't want to give your book away, but just this one moment we got to talk about, because there was a gang chasing you at 3 in the morning.
Unbelievable. I saw them coming toward me in the street. I was in the Lower East Side, a very dangerous neighborhood, and I saw this 3 or 4 in the morning, this group of young, hostile-looking men coming toward me. So I moved out into the street, and they all moved out into the street, and I went, oh dear. So I turned and I started running, and of course I was twice their age, and they caught up to me really quickly, and I had a hoodie on. They grabbed my hoodie, and they slammed me over the hood of a car, and they started going through all my pockets, but I had my money in my hand. And they were looking in all my pockets, and this voice inside my head said, just yell as loud as you can. And I screamed, help! And it was a completely quiet street, and my voice echoed off of the buildings. And all of a sudden, they just scattered as if they'd been shot. And I was standing there alone in the street. And I look over, and there's this drug addict woman sitting on the curb there, and she goes, he had a gun. And I started laughing.
Yeah, this is amazing.
And I walked down the street and I went and bought drugs. because I still had my drug money in my hand, you know, amazing.
The Actors Fund helped you a lot.
Yes, they did. And they sent me to a halfway house in the middle of Minneapolis in the middle of winter. And I had no coat, I had no boots, I had no gloves, I had no hat. And a very famous playwright, who I can't tell you his name because he's still around today, had been their previous dishwasher because he was there in...
So you didn't qualify.
And I thought, oh, I'm not famous enough to wash your dishes.
Like when you came back, you had your safe route.
Yes.
Down 7th Avenue.
I made a grid of streets that it was safe for me to walk on, where I wouldn't see dealers and I wouldn't see places I'd done. And I could, and you know, because I'd been doing it for like 3 years at this point, it was a very narrow route that I could be on. And as I was passing 42nd Street, I looked to my right one day and I saw a place where I had often bought drugs. And it's not like I was thinking of going there and buying drugs. It's just that I found myself looking at it, and this voice in my head said, "No more angels." Just like that. It literally felt the whole time like something was pulling me, like a physical force. And one day, it just let go. And you know, I was in therapy every day, and I was in AA every day.
All added up to it,
but I couldn't say that this did it or that did it, or I couldn't see that I had actually changed anything in myself. I just kept trying, as I'd always been trying, to get over it. And then one day, it just let go. And because it was so mysterious, that aspect of it, like I could never really explain to you why it let go or how I got out, it made it seem so precious, you know.
It is. I think it's what people call a moment of grace.
Yes, yes.
You know?
And within a year, my life really resumed at such a pace that I could hardly even grasp it. And I had gratitude for the whole experience, you know.
So I have a few questions now that I ask my guests. What other profession other than the ones you are doing now would you ever want to try if you had another lifetime in this one?
To be a yoga instructor.
Ooh, wonderful.
Yeah.
What's your favorite German word, if you know any?
I know several. Ungeheuer.
Ungeheuer!
That's the greatest
means
word.
Monster.
Ungeheuer. It's in Salome.
Oh, wonderful. The way you say it, too.
Sie ist ein Ungeheuer.
What is your biggest weakness, greatest weakness?
I could never be thin. I always wanted to be thin. I could never be thin.
I'm very good at?
Rolling with the punches.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Now, when I was taking my classes with you,
yes,
at one point you wrote me a song.
Yes, I did.
And you sang it at the Metropolitan Room, and of course I was crying. I'm always so moved by you. And would you do me the honor, just sing a couple of bars?
Of course. Ich bin ein Fräulein von der Nacht. Leben ist nicht, was ich gedacht. Kommst du mit mir, kaufe mir ein Bier. Mein Tisch ist leer und ich bin ein Fräulein von der Nacht.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. What a blessing to have
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ed Dixon.
I got back to New York and had an audition to play an old dog who was the narrator in Dr. Seuss' How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I got called back, and then I got some good news and some bad news. The bad news was it was going to play 14 times a week during the Christmas holidays. The good news was it paid a fortune. So I decided I had to do something to make sure that I ended up in that dog costume and that money ended up in my pocket. I also heard that the old dog had to do some dancing, and I had no intention of going through a dance call at that point in my life. So I wrote this little soft shoe for the callback. It's called You Can't Teach an Old Dog New Tricks. Now, you can, of course. It just takes a very, very long time. I don't roll over or fetch old sticks. Won't wear a collar for fleas and ticks. I sniff a hydrant to get my kicks. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Don't bother ordering me to heel. A can of Alpo is not a meal. You're not the boss of me, here's the deal. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I don't have a mind to do what I'm not inclined to. Believe me, you want your slippers at 6:30. You say to fetch 'em, but I say nix. You call the doctor to have me fixed. Look here, I brought you some kippers. Where would you like your slippers? You just taught an old dog new tricks. Arr.
Thank you so much. Thank you.